Hi, Troy. Thanks very much for joining up with me here. A man full of wisdom. I'm looking forward to picking your brain a bit. Um, yeah, let's talk about yoga. That's what I have you here for. And I know yoga, we could do hours and hours. We could talk hours on end on yoga and what is yoga. But let's start off. We're just gonna keep things simple. Talk about how did you get into yoga? What attracted you to yoga? And then we'll kind of transition into talking about the ego and mental health. Let's do it.
Well, I think the general consensus when you ask most people why they do yoga, after they got pulled in by advertising or whatever else yoga is in our modern times, is suffering. Generally speaking, it's suffering that is the number one reason for why you're going to enter a space, whether it be a hot yoga room or just doing a practice, doing an asana, a physical practice. It's all oriented towards trying to get that 1/1000th of a second of space after whatever the hell your day consists of that's preventing you from having a spacious life. So for me, a lot of fighting, a lot of physical pain, a lot of family stuff, a lot of isolation, inevitably with enough support from some friends that just wouldn't give up, they pulled me into a yoga class, and ironically I ended up dating the woman that was teaching the class about 10 seconds later, I guess. So that led me into the direction. What I had going for me is I had a mother who brought me into Eastern yoga, meditation, and all that. At about age 7, I was going into ashrams, but I didn't put it together. It didn't mean anything to me. It was just a reason to go and have chocolate after dealing with mantra and whatever else was offered for 3 hours and talking about what life potentially could be. So all of it was there, but it was really enough suffering that allowed me to take a class that helped me immediately, because I have TMJ, so my jaws was out. And then I was being told that I probably wouldn't be able to talk by the time I was 30. So with doing a class and immediately getting relief, and then it releasing stuff that was also in my body, and anger and emotion, I was allowed to have a forum for releasing the fact that I was pissed off. I became pretty disciplined pretty fast. For about 3 years I was in.
Yeah, and I know just doing my own little research into the nervous system that the jaw is very high up on the hierarchy of survival.
Yeah.
So there is something wrong with the jaw, which is very important for eating food. That's going to kind of set the nervous system on more of alert. And I think a lot of it's something that people don't even look into. People don't connect it. But did you have jaw issues your whole life?
I probably would have ended up having jaw issues just on the basis of the way I was biting down, but I actually had a fight where the guy actually knocked the joint out. Okay. And then that just became a problematic symptomology that tracked down my entire body. So
let's move on to the mind. What is the ego?
Like what's so great about the brain is if we chop off the top of our scalp and stick a pitchfork into our head, the brain won't feel anything. Like that's the whole purpose of going in there. So you'll ask a person a direct question. You'll be like, how are you doing? Well, first of all, nobody that you know knows who the hell they are. So I'm using you as I'm growing up I'm using you literally to try and figure out who I am by caring about what you think about me. Well, if you do that with enough people, let's say you do that with 3 people, you're screwed for life, because who gives a shit what you think about me? But that's the only way that we can start to track down the notion of the you that we are. We have no idea who we are. So if I ask you a direct question like, how are you? You watch a person's eyes, it will take them a billionth of a second to go up into their head. They're looking up in the ceiling. They're looking everywhere as if the answer to the question was outside of them. They're looking as the story of who they are is who they think they are. Well, that anxiety of trying to improve upon yourself is going to turn you into literally a mental illness.
So this, what you're talking about, is the ego. This is where the collection of the stories that they heard about themselves, they start to believe, and they start creating this identity that they believe is them. Correct?
Yeah, everybody you know is basing who they are on identification of their body, because where else are you going to look? So they identify with the body,
Mm-hmm.
or they identify with thinking, or they identify with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are the three things you don't want to be doing if you want to find yourself, because the identification is the source of all suffering.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you attach as a concept of who you are, so that you become a story rather than becoming the living moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the present moment doesn't have to be so spiritual and so, I mean, it's enough in itself to just be living in it. But
Mm-hmm.
what we do is we make it all fluffy, and we make it all like, oh yeah, you just have to find the present moment. It's like, no, the present moment is badass, because the present moment is bringing the past into the present, so that if you could just mind your own business,
Mm-hmm.
you'd realize very quickly that you are the source of your own suffering,
Mm-hmm.
that you think you're a story, that you think you're the experiences that you had, that you think you are your body, is going to cause you suffering, especially when what is the body, what is life pointing to the whole time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you better learn how to surrender very quickly, because this body is awesome, but I don't get to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't you go to the end to get to the point? You'd have to go to the place you're going to end up, and I'm leaving my body. So that's not a source of pain or fear or terror. That's like, yeah, we should be taught that on day one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't cause you any suffering. It brings you into, I really appreciate this moment with you, because this isn't permanent.
Mm-hmm.
It's impermanent, as our thoughts. Like, what, listen, I'm going to give you the next 10 seconds of my thinking process. This is where we look to find ourselves. I just thought hot dog. And then hot dog led me to believing, like, I wonder if my girlfriend really is attracted to me, because she said something about my feet the other day. And then that leads me to thinking, like, I don't even know if I like hockey, and I'm a Canadian. So if I look for myself in my thoughts, I'm insane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, they're passing.
Uh-huh.
You don't identify with them.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just, they have nothing to do with who I am.
And that's what I find a lot of people I'm dealing with, they're dealing with a lot of, it could be childhood trauma, or even just accumulation of stress in their life that triggered maybe some sort of panic attack. And all this is your nervous system just thinks there's threat. It doesn't understand these modern stresses, so it fixes on these alarm bells, and they experience these scary feelings. But then your mind is trying to make sense of these scary feelings. So then these thoughts start racing, and you keep attaching to these thoughts and freaking yourself out even more. Oh, am I going to go crazy? Am I never going to get better? Or and you can go into a deep. I went into some dark places with my mind when I was dealing with my own issues,
Yeah.
disorder and stuff. But yeah, it's important to be able to step back and just watch these thoughts, and
Well,
just
and that's you.
yeah, and that's a true
That's
you.
you. I mean, that's the it's like, and I don't mean this with disrespect, because I do understand the process of mental illness. I don't mean this with disrespect, but it's like drinking an ayahuasca or taking acid. It's like, you got to know whatever you see is just your mind.
Mm.
So it might be a horrendous, living, hellish suffering, but nobody has the strength to keep the suffering permanently. There's going to be moments where you come up for air.
Yeah, yeah.
The impermanence of it is what we don't focus on. So how do we keep strengthening the weakest part of who we are? Because we label the mental fluctuation. We label the state that is a passing state. It might be the worst moment that anybody's ever felt, but you're not strong enough to keep it in the darkness. Nobody's strong enough. But I don't know why. That's what yoga really points to. What it points to is, why aren't you focusing on the gaps, the pauses where you are coming up for air, as much as you're focusing on the parts where you're like, please tell me how fucked up I am.
Yeah.
Please, I'm begging for you to tell me the mental illness that I have, so I can make sense of why I'm not normal. Well, even the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is a made-up thing of 950 pages of mental illnesses. Homosexuality was a mental illness in 1973.
Mhm.
All of these things are just labeling behaviors.
Mhm.
You don't label a behavior. You don't label a state of mind if you want to be sane.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they don't have a definition in the DSM that speaks to what the insanity is or what normal is.
yeah,
So you can see it's all just masturbation.
yeah.
It's just people, you know, preferring the fact that it makes sense to be broken rather than to hear someone like me say this. I'm at peace.
Yeah, yeah,
There's nothing you could give me that I don't already have.
mhm.
There's no joy outside of myself. People hear that and they're like, oh, yeah. It's like, no, you could deal with it if I'm like, I'm like everybody. I'm fucked up. Well, then you can make room for me, but I'm not,
Mhm.
because I've done the work of accepting and surrendering to my own pain,
Mhm.
which
That's a
is
huge one. That's a
the
huge.
best journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was kind of caught up in that mindset myself, where I was, you know, when I was at the bottom, I'd say, like when things were really, really bad. I was asking the question, why me? Like, what did I do in life to deal with this? And I couldn't find any recovery stories. And I was asking myself this the whole time, because I was dealing with depersonalization, which is now, and I just, I mean, I hate the labels, just what you said. At the end of the day, it's
No, I
just
get
the
it.
nervous system went into shock. And depersonalization, it's a feeling of being detached from yourself, but it's part of the freeze state. You see it in the animal kingdom the whole time, where like an animal gets caught by its predator and he just shuts down. The body goes into shutdown. Or you might even see it if there was a car accident. You might see some people will run into the middle of the accident to rescue, while the other people might just stand there and just say, I couldn't move, I was frozen, I just watched it and I couldn't move, and I
Yeah.
felt this out of body experience. So these are just symptoms of a traumatized system, and that's that. Early on I picked up on that. But I was at a stage where I was asking, like, why me? What did I do to deserve this? And I remember I was walking to work one morning, and I was just feeling like fucking shit. And yeah, I was just really down myself. And I looked over, and there was a lady, a blind lady, walking along with a stick. She's just going about her day. I'm like, what the fuck am I fucking, for trying to, like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work by saying, why me? Just, make me better. I don't know. So I said, right, I got it, take it into my own hands. I'm dealing with this issue, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And a huge part of it was building that awareness of, like, working on building that awareness of my ego, because like there's a lot of stigma around mental health. And I go into work and surrounded with all the boys, and part of my ego was like, don't tell anyone what you're dealing with, try to keep it covered up. And I was like, no, this is not
Totally.
me, this is not me, this is just my body just feels threatened. And I looked at it that way, and I tell people, listen, don't mind me, I'll be with my clients and I'm fighting a panic attack, I'm twitching, I'm walking on my toes, and I'm laughing about it. I go, look at me, I'm just like, what, but whatever, don't mind me. I got this under control, it's going to take a bit of time. I just talk a little bit about it. I didn't want to drag anyone into my world, but I just let them know that, I was an open book to them. And then in a lot of cases, they opened up to me. They're like, oh, I'm dealing with this, or the brother or the loved one is dealing with panic attacks. Oh, can I put you in touch with them? Maybe you can talk about it. And just being that open just took the power away from the panic disorder and the depersonalization. And it took some work, it took some time to eventually come out the other end. But I find this is the biggest problem. And this is why I wanted to talk to you, was to talk about the ego. And I think the ego, there's a positive and negative to it. Like, my ego was like, there's no way this is going to fucking beat me. This is when I used the ego to work for me. It's like, there's no way this panic disorder is going to get the better of me. I'm going to fucking crush this. I'm going to get my life back. I'm going to crush it. But at the same time, the other part of the ego, where it was like, don't tell anyone, keep this quiet, you're cooler than this, Stephen. You don't want people knowing you're dealing with panic attacks. That's when I detached from that end of things. So it was the way I kind of made it work for me. It was like very open in one way, detached from my ego. But then when I wanted to, I'm guessing that would be attaching to your ego, but like a positive, healthy ego, where it's like, okay, Stephen, we're going to get this, and there's no way this is going to stop you. So yeah.
Well, it's from the spiritual perspective or from the yoga perspective, an ego is a wonderful thing. The ego is the experience of, if you see the whole world as the whole, as the one. So you can't escape it. It's just whatever is this material, energetic form is just one. Everything's trapped in this life. The ego is the specific individual aspect of the whole. The microcosm of spirit is man. So it's awesome to be able to be in a world of separation, but to be able to be connected. It's like we're a drop of the ocean. You know, we that's what the purpose of it is to have this experience. The problem with the ego is, good or bad, it's all made up. It's like what Shakespeare says is what is, see, this is one of the terrible moments of my life. What is good or bad is not so. It's thinking that makes it so. And I know I just killed Shakespeare, but that's what he's pointing to is, if you want a spiritual experience for 15 seconds, don't listen. Don't not listen, because that'll just strengthen the voice inside your head. But don't listen to the part of you that says, damn, Mr. Boyle, you are so handsome at this age in your life. And don't listen to the part of you that says, you could never be attractive. It's not possible for you to be attractive. Both of them are selling you and advertising the same story as, why don't you see yourself as an objective reality rather than to be the subject of your life? See, because to come to the point where it's like, you can't be hurt if you're not a concept. You can only be hurt if you actually have beliefs in who you think you are.
Yes, yes.
And you can't find who you are as an idea, because that's not how life works. You have to be in the present moment. So your neural traumatic, psychosomatic issues that come, that's actually just healing. It's like your body says, you're in a place in your life right now, conscious or unconscious, where I'm going to send you the messages of your past, and we're going to have to come into the present moment. I'm forcing you. It won't feel good, because if it went down 20 years ago and it came from serious trauma, well, it's going to come up and it's going to feel the same way. But what we don't teach people is, we don't teach them to witness and view the suffering, to view it, to see it, to drink it, to hopefully be in the presence of somebody that cares for you while it's happening, to speak to it if it needs to be spoken of. But all you're going to get from a really good counselor or a really good friend is, they're not going to pet your head while you're growling and strengthen the weakest part of you. They're just going to watch you be crazy without judging you. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, who do you know that isn't crazy? Anybody who identifies with their thoughts, there's nothing wrong with thinking. But if you identify with the voice in your head, which after all, the thinking is not a form of communication. Humans haven't evolved since the point that we were speaking silently, and we were using our eyes and we were using our body to point to what it is, what we've meant. The thinking is just to have a conversation between the body and then who it is I think I am. It's not who I am. They're just thoughts that pass through me.
Yeah.
The communication of who I am is, you use the thoughts to speak to what is true in this moment. But even though I know your name's Stephen Boyle, and it's a great way for me to locate you, there's nobody in this conversation named Stephen Boyle or Troy. That's just what we do to try and give the brain an easier access point to attempt to communicate. But nobody's communicating. They're all personalizing word associations like love, which if you listen to a Bruno Mars song is actually suffering. I'd put my head on a train track for you. I'd stick a gun to my head for you, but you won't do the same. Like, it's all word association. So I'm trying to say, when I can mind my own business and not agree or disagree with anything that's being offered, I get better and better at finding a point of space. And that point of space is me. I'm in a room. You're in a room. Even if we're asleep, we're in that room. But when you can not associate with whatever's being broadcast, then life will start to move through you. Then it's not about me. Do you know who I am? I got to get important. I got to be better. Like, those are the places that cause us suffering.
And then for someone who listening to this, who, there's a lot of people still, they heard the term ego, but didn't really understand it. And hopefully this made some sense to them. And they want to start a practice. How do they go about, okay, I want to start now working on, catching my ego, being aware of my ego. What would you recommend them if they want to start a practice?
Well, really what yoga focuses on and what healing focuses on is just awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that you think is you is, and I mean this with respect, is your own ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
It's the source of what's causing you your own suffering. So the practice would be, is like if you and I were doing this, the most powerful point will be the points of stillness and quiet, because they will bring up my past. So in counseling, what I used to do is, you don't diagnose the person's condition. That wouldn't serve them. You wait for them to go crazy. So if you and I have quiet enough stillness, so are you aware that you're smiling right now? So if you bring a person into their own awareness so that they can have the relationship to, oh, I don't know if I was aware that I was smiling right there. Or often it will go in the body, like the fingers will start to move or the leg will start to move. It's just energy that's trying to make its way into the present moment. So if you can give people awareness of that, they'll start to move to a place where they can see the behaviors of the past broadcasting to the present moment. Well, what is the most tangible way to do all this is breath, obviously.